Good evening and welcome to TDM Talk Show. I'm your host, Kelsey Wilhelm. Our guest tonight is Elvo Sou, a psychotherapist working at the University of Macau. Sou joins us amongst the ongoing coronavirus epidemic, which Macau and the world is facing, a situation requiring not only medical remedies, but also mental support and awareness. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, my pleasure.
This is a unique situation for Macau. We haven't quite had anything like it happen before. We had SARS happen 17 years ago, and hopefully we've learned from that. What is your feeling when you're walking the streets of Macau now?
Well, everybody is certainly wearing masks, and I think it's a very good precaution following the government's instruction. But at the same time, I sense a very strong sense of fear. People worry about not having enough food, so they were panicking. So I think this is a time that we need to trust our government that they would have the appropriate measure to help us to cope and respond to the epidemic.
Now, as of Wednesday, we'd gotten, the figures had reached double digits for Macau, but it doesn't appear to be growing as much as in the mainland, which is understandable. But there have been various measures that the government has implemented to try and limit the amount of tourists coming in from Hubei and control the ones that are here. What do you think about their communication with the public so far?
Well, I think the communication with the public has been very good. There are various channels of communication, press conference every day, right at 5 o'clock, and then chief executive would come out and do a couple press conference, for the important announcement. So all the medias are covering this very well. So this, I think, puts the very transparent and open information to the public. But at the same time, because of the social media, I think some of our members of the community, they may follow it very closely, maybe like every minute. So I think that sometimes can create more anxiety than that is necessary.
That's an interesting element because it is such a large element of how we consume our information also nowadays.
Yes.
You were in Macau in 2003 during the SARS outbreak, which had a much smaller impact on Macau and over a shorter period of time.
Yes.
How would you compare the effect of social media now, with the fact that it didn't exist back then, to how we interact with each other?
Yeah, I think now the social media, it feeds us with information, so it's like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, we get the information from the government in a very immediate manner. See how they announce all the news and different things. And also they are putting different encouragement messages, which I think what the community needs now, the frontline workers, the police, the medical staff, that's the kind of spirit that we need. And that is where the social media gets on very well. But at the same time, I think on the social media, there are rumors, unconfirmed news. Sometimes it's just like unscientific things going on, and people would believe it. Right? So that is the area that we need to be really concerned about. People should refrain themselves from being excessively exposed. At the same time, do not spread unconfirmed news.
Even myself, I've come across numerous things in which it seems believable because of the fact that it is on tape. But you don't know where it was filmed, you don't know when it was filmed, you don't know whether it was staged. There are a lot of things circulating around. And aside from normal announcements, we saw the chief executive come on earlier and give his very direct press conference, be open to questions. Immediately after that, we still had panic buying. And it seems like that can just kind of exacerbate what's been going on. In terms of the people themselves, when certain measures that people can take or try and approach towards having a level approach towards this and not getting over excessive in terms of their reactions to things. What would you suggest as some of the ways of mitigating the stress of this? You'd mentioned maybe having less time in the social media. What are some of the other ways that people can?
Well, first of all, I think people need to understand that the feeling of fear permeates throughout the community, right? And that is understandable. That is our survival instinct. We need that sense of fear to keep ourselves alert and be ready to respond to emergency, right? But at the same time, when this level of fear goes out, out of check, that it does not help. our response are not rational anymore. So first of all, we need to accept that we are in a situation that would give us anxiety, but we also have to understand that there are measures for us to mitigate that. That is number one. At the same time, people respond to this situation with different psychological reaction.
Yeah.
So fear is one. Some may be feeling irritable and anger. Yeah, and maybe some people start to experience sleep disturbance, sense of loss of control, sense of helplessness. These are common reactions in an abnormal event. So people need to understand that it's okay to have them. Yeah, we don't have to act upon them. We have to be able to differentiate feelings and reality.
Okay.
So I think that's one thing that is very important for us to know. But of course, we have some other self-help or coping skills that we can help our people as well.
This is in regards to the information aspect and having correct information coming in. We're at an interesting period because we did just get our new government literally 2 months ago, less than 2 months ago.
Right.
And we do have new leadership, but it's been interesting to see how the approach that they've taken and their choices so far. From the information that I've seen so far, the fact that they closed the casinos for 2 weeks was a pretty much unprecedented step. I mean, it had happened one time before, but for such a lengthy period of time, that's surprising. I think that in one sense that could be reassuring people, but this is going to last for some time. We had the difficulty of what happened after Hato, but that was during a relatively shorter period of time.
Yes.
Do you think that over the course of this, the community needs to bond together more? And how does that work in the context of everyone being told to stay at home?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I do agree that it's a time that we need to bond more, right? But geographically, we are asked to stay home, which is something that we all should try to do as much as possible. But now with the different formats of communication, we can reach out to different people very easily. For example, I actually would suggest people would take this time to reach out to the people that you have not talked to for a long time. We have been in a very busy kind of schedule, you know, in our society. So now this is time that you reach out to your friends, reach out to your family, people you have not talked to for a long time. So this is time that you can do it because you have so much time at home. At the same time, I think this is also a time we can spend family time together. What was the last time that parents were having like a full day home playing games with kids, right? So those are the things that we can make use out of this situation.
Now, a lot of these people who are working for the government, who are in non-essential services, and for various other companies which have chosen voluntarily to close or take a temporary break, they are at home.
Yes.
But some of these people are here, they're on the front lines, they're having to work. This includes not only the medical professionals and the police, but also journalists and other people who are in other necessary fields. What do you say in terms of, towards the institutions, what is a good posture in terms of the institution supporting your employees, but also watching out for their mental health during this period?
This is a very busy time for everybody who is right now still working because everything is still in flux. So there are many decisions to be made, many arrangements to be made, right? So people working on that, whether they are the decision makers, whether they are the frontline staff, the medical, the police, everybody is on a very fast pace and is likely that we get stressed from that. So it's very important that at this time, we be more compassionate to one another, be more encouraging to one another in our ways of greeting, in our way of sending message, okay? Send the love and send the encouragement and also our support along the way. That is a very important thing to raise the morale. At the same time, we also have to accept the fact that we are humans. There are things that we try our best, but may not be perfect, and that's okay. I think the community knows that everybody working right now, they are doing their best already, even though that may not be perfect. And I think for the community, the society, to have that understanding throughout the society, that helps us to get together more effectively.
Have you seen that just over the course of the evolution of this so far? I mean, even things kind of accelerated after January 27th. But have you seen that kind of bonding and coming together so far, at least within your local community?
Yeah. I think especially in the social media groups, people are sending encouraging videos, messages, tips how to prevent the epidemic. You know, that's a way of us encouraging one another. I also belong to the Macau Psychology Association. We have created a resource page to show all the different psychological support and resources that are available to the community. And also we would issue our WeChat posts, Facebook posts, messages, also to build a sense of hope and encouragement and strength and endurance for the society.
That's great. In terms of, aside from associations and their contributions, we did have the learning period after SARS,
Yes.
In which we not only took a different approach in terms of legislation, but we also started to develop the infrastructure, such as the Center for Disease Prevention and Control that we have in Koloan, which is being very effective right now.
Yeah.
Has the mentality of the government response, do you think, changed in regards to what had happened in SARS and also in terms of Hato?
Yeah, I think Hato was a wake-up call.
Yeah.
To Macau and the entire society, including the government, that we need to be better prepared for crisis. And I think all the measures, infrastructure, as well as the communication platforms are now proved to be very effective when we are facing this epidemic.
What about the media? I mean, the media has a very strong role in needing to communicate the essential information as quickly as possible. There's obviously different takes or different focuses which different media outlets will do, but in terms of what you've seen so far of the coverage, how impartial has it been, and has it contributed in any way towards a possible feeling of fear?
Well, I think so far the mainstream media covering the situation in quite impartial way. You know, the thing about fear mostly come from the unconfirmed sources,
Yes.
and that is where the problem lies. So I think citizens should learn how not to trust and not to spread those kind of unconfirmed news. And at the same time, people have so much time at home.
Yeah.
So that's why it's very common that they stay attached to their iPad, iPhone, you know, or TV or whatsoever. So at this time, it's also very important that we schedule ourselves a very structured activity, right? And at what time you can do what,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Be it relaxation, some indoor exercises, spend time with kids too with their homework, or maybe listen to some music or do some family games. I think those structure would help us cope with the current situation psychologically.
Okay, that's interesting. Not letting yourself get caught up on the treadmill
Yes.
of looking for the next update, looking for the number of possible death toll increase or something like that. That's very important for your own mental stability and
Exactly.
not getting caught up in the crisis. It seems like a lot of the international coverage has taken also different focuses in terms of how they approach things, and a lot of them have gone for the sensationalist angle. I know that a lot of the reporting coming out of Wuhan has been very much directed at focusing on something that could be negative. And fair enough. I mean, there is a need to give information about the negative aspects, but
Right.
if it doesn't also have the other side, do you in terms of your own personal viewing of the international coverage, which side of the fence is it more or less on? Is it being too sensationalist and trying to push fear in order to, I don't know, sell newspapers, or is it still having enough informative value that it's useful to people?
Well, media is something not my expertise, right? But let me just put it into my personal perspective. I think media is very important to let people know about the facts,
Yeah.
right? But now sometimes certain medias, they put quote unquote certain facts into a very sentimental way. And sometimes that can be impartial, and that does not help. I think what is important is to have the facts in a very impartial way, but at the same time, during this time, we do need a sense of bonding, encouragement, and instill a sense of hope. And that is important too as well.
We have seen a very strong and direct position taken by the chief executive and also particularly the Secretary for Economy and Finance. And that was that was interesting to see, given that it was new leadership. How important is having that direct approach and direct information for a figure, Macau's top official and one of the top secretaries in Macau during this period?
Yeah, I think they give a lot of reassurance to the people in Macau, and I think the community need that reassurance. And I hope our community would trust that reassurance, and with that, we can get on.
A lot of people are worried about catching this and then going, or are worried that they have caught the virus, and then during the testing period, they do need to be subject to a type of quarantine, and eventually they could be subject to a longer type of quarantine. There are different groups that we have here. We have the tourists from Hubei who are up in the Posada Marina Infant Hotel. We have the group who is at the Center for Infectious Disease Prevention and Control in Kolowan. We have the group that's in the hospital. For someone who is in quarantine, what are coping strategies?
Who is in quarantine?
Who is in quarantine.
Or who is in quarantine, right? I think, first of all, also have to affect the fact that they would have feelings of fear, feeling of anger maybe as well. I think they have to understand that these are normal reaction, right? And at the same time, this is not a time to blame anybody. Yeah, and that is important too. And also understand that such measure is for their own protection as well as the protection to their loved one. Yeah, so that kind of helps. At the same time, during the 14 days of quarantine, it's also important to keep themselves in check, keep themselves a regular schedule, as I already mentioned, take rest, do things, connect with others, and that is important. And at the same time, the government has put together different resources to provide support to this group of people. One of the joint initiative is the University of Macau's effort with the Social Welfare Bureau that we are providing support to the people quarantined at the Posada Hotel.
And that includes counselors and mental health professionals?
Yes, we have put together a special team of 9 people, including 3 professors in psychiatry, clinical psychology, as well as 6 psychotherapists and professional counselors from our counseling center to provide online and telephone support to people in need.
Has that ever happened before, to your knowledge, in Macau?
In terms of such kind of support?
In terms of mental support for victims of an event or an epidemic?
Well, in terms of epidemic, I'm not quite sure. But when crisis happens like this, the first phase is always about the logistic and safety, right? Then the next phase will be the psychological part. And in the past event, for example, in Hado, we see that the psychological support, which comes afterward, is very important. And I think the government right now is doing a lot to put different resources together to make sure that those who need help would get help.
There's no exact timeline for this so far. We don't quite know exactly when we're going to hit the peak. I've heard some people mention something along mid-March, but I guess it depends on who gets infected next and how long that period goes on for. But after a major event, people are encouraged to just get over it. People are, that's kind of the societal, I guess I'd say there's a stigma against seeking out help, especially mental help. But if you do choose to seek out help, is there a timeline in which you should be searching to try and become comfortable again, or is it just a day-by-day, step-by-step, I need to achieve these goals?
Well, different people have different reactions, For example, at this time, a lot of us are still in this reaction phase, right? So as I already mentioned, just practice the daily living things, to keep ourselves in track, grounded, stay connected. I think that would help the most of the people. But some people may be affected a little bit more, So their daily functioning may be affected, their symptoms may be more severe, and that is the time, whether now or later, is also a time to seek a professional help. And because of the current situation, I think a hotline would be a very first step for people to talk to, and then they can make appropriate referral afterward.
What about for the people in the who are family members of those who they know have been infected, and they've already undergone the test, but they've been cleared? How can they support their family members who are, aside from the regular contact? Is there any particular way of letting someone know that they can get through this?
Yeah, sure. Actually, in the realm of positive psychology, in the field of positive psychology, we have learned that gratitude, okay, is a very powerful tool to help us to face the whatever kind of difficulties that we have. And it's not an easy task because we have to see the positive things in the middle of all the negative things that's happening, right? But we can train ourselves to do that, okay? So find something that we are grateful for, okay, a day, count our blessing, right? And then share it with the person that you love. That helps you, that helps the other person as well.
These periods of crisis could cause more people to then be open to the idea of seeking help, whether it's from friends or family or whether it's from a registered professional. It'll take some time for us to break the barrier of the stigma. But do you think overall in terms of, because there's everything from students suffering pressure from school, marital relationships, work relationships, all of those things are affecting a wide variety of people within Macau. There was a previous statistic from a couple years ago, which was something like 1 in 4 people have experienced a type of mental disorder over the course of their lives. That's been brought more to the forefront by films such as Joker, which made a very violent portrayal of what mental illness can be like, or suffering from a mental problem. Do you think that there are more people now? Do you think that that stigma is getting broken down? There are more people now who are willing to at least open up and talk?
Yeah.
Within Macau specifically?
Of course, of course. I've been in the field in Macau for the last 17 years, starting from SARS. And it has
Good time to start.
Yes, it's been my observation that many more people are opening up to the use of service and also seeking help. I think the society is changing, more accepting, but of course, it's always an area that we can make further improvement. So it's very important that we do not judge. We do not stigmatize, and that will help us to get through the situation right now as well as in the future.
When we have a time of crisis, those former or ongoing mental problems and issues that we face don't just go away. Do you think that having this time of crisis can work as a distractor from those problems, or that they will just kind of stack on top of each other?
Well, it is not uncommon that they actually stack up. Yeah. Okay. Because people who are already anxious, they can get the extra fear, from what's happening now. Yeah. So I think it is very important that whoever, I should say, if they have been receiving treatment, they probably should have learned, some of the skills to help themselves cope. So practice those skills more. Yeah. And I think different institutes, they are offering special services to their service users right now. For example, at the University of Macau, we used to provide face-to-face counseling, but because this situation does not allow us to do that, so we are now open to online and telephone support to our students who need our service. So I think services are still there. Those who need help can seek help.
But this puts there's been a need for therapists, whether it's speech therapists or psychotherapists also within Macau. We've seen that there's been a growing need for them. And it seems like a period like now puts an increased pressure on those people, because they're people too.
Yes.
And they're not only, you are a person too, obviously. You're not only handling the current situation, because you're currently living in it as well, but you're having to deal with people's fears and trying to teach them to cope with that. How is that for you as a professional? How do you have to have your own coping mechanisms also?
Yes, I practice the same skills that I just mentioned. I practice my, in the morning I pray. I practice my breathing. And I ground myself, during lunchtime. So it's like the little steps that we can still do that. Yeah, so that is a calming place for myself. And I think people, the professionals in our field, they know how to take care of themselves. But of course, at the same time, many people would like to, can I do a little bit more? Can I do a little bit more, right? It's not just people in our field. I think in any situation, people who want to be a contributing member to help solve the problem. So at the same time, we have to watch how we're responding to that. Are we like burning ourselves out? So it's also very important to balance the amount of work that we put in and also the self-care.
Yeah.
Self-care right now is a very important thing for everybody.
What about the actual number of professionals that we do have here within the mental health field? Do you think that they are enough to handle the needs or the ongoing needs? Because we're kind of at the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see how this plays out for the next couple months. Do you think that there are enough professionals, and should we be trying to source people from outside also to come in and help support in this time of need?
Well, I think this increasing need has been going on, right? Because the society just simply have more need in terms of psychological support. It's not just about this situation. But from our experience in Haddle, what we have learned is that there are different layers of professionals. You have the psychiatrist, you have the psychotherapist. They can deal with the a little bit more severe kind of issues, you know, when people are seeking help. But in our community, we have another group, maybe like about 300 counselors working in different NGOs, schools, different sectors. And they are also a very important resource at a time like this, because not everybody affected by the epidemic would need that very severe kind of support or treatment, right? So we still have a very large group of professionals in Macau who can provide education, right? Teaching, and other kind of support that would help our community to get over this situation.
I'm curious as to, during situations like this, a lot of people will come out to help, and they always have the best intentions. Well, I would like to think that they always have the best intentions, and it is a necessary part of handling a crisis. It's coming together and helping one another. But in terms of mental health, is it possible for people to volunteer in a certain way? And are there any types of dangers in having someone who is not trained, let's say answering a hotline or trying to do their part but not having the proper skill set?
Well, it's similar to first aid, right? You don't have to be a medical professional, right? But you still need to be trained, to provide CPR, right? So I think Macau, we have a group, as I mentioned, 300 counselors, working in the field. They can be a very strong force to provide the kind of support, meaning the hotline and providing education, calming the community, so that helps as well. But I think we need certain of a mechanism and structure that so that they would work in a concerted effort. That is what is needed.
I have to ask it. We have what has been dubbed as a stable and kind of well-executed plan in Macau in terms of the mass distribution scheme, the way that the issue is being handled in terms of transparency, and our own chief executive showing up, like yourself, wearing a mask to the press conference, same with all of the top officials, all of the officials in the Health Bureau press conferences. The neighboring SAR has had a little bit of difficulty with that. What do you see as being some of the things that they could improve upon?
You mean Hong Kong?
Yeah.
Well, I think Hong Kong right now, people need to be a little bit more understanding. Understanding of the fear that is permeating in the community. Understanding the stress that the frontline people are working. So I think that sort of message is very important.
And well, we'll see how the messages are continuing to be communicated going forward, because this is an ongoing process. We literally have things changing day by day. For the ongoing thought process of people going through this, should they keep watching the daily press conferences? Should they try and be as informed as possible? Should they try and keep their finger on the pulse?
Well, I think people should stay alert, because we need to respond to the changing situation. But as I mentioned, you don't have to follow it 24 hours a day. Pick couple times or maximum 3 times a day to follow the news, maybe morning news, evening news, and then the 5 o'clock press conference. Okay.
Do you have any other recommendations for people as we're going through this and getting to the other side of this?
Yeah, I think there are many different ways of self-help. And for example, I already mentioned a very structured schedule, relaxation exercise, indoor exercise, and keep yourself a good diet, even though sometimes it's difficult now, but keep ourselves good diet, drink plenty water, and make sure avoid going out whenever possible. Okay, wear your mask and wash your hand frequently.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you.
That's all for this evening. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you again next week on more TDM Talk Show. Good night.